Gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
Today we're dropping one of the most highly requested and anticipated top 10 lists in MMA, the greatest light heavyweights of all time. This list is jam-packed with the legends from the best eras of the sport, the guys who put the 205-pound division on the map as the premier weight class and brought us the must-see classics such as Frank Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz and Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonner, to name a few light heavyweight bangers. These fighters are those that have truly changed the landscape of sanctioned fighting, and our list takes into account their overall influence on mixed martial arts as we know it today. So sit back, relax, turn your brain off, and get ready to enjoy some all-original MMA content. Number 10. Kicking off our list at number 10 is The Natural, Randy Couture. Couture was a true UFC pioneer through and through. He truly was one of the toughest wrestlers in the early days of the UFC. He had a ridiculously unbeatable aura about him. But if you ask me, Randy Couture's finest and most memorable fights would have to be his trilogy bouts with Chuck Liddell. That's vintage UFC, and those men are part of what brought my eyes to the product all those years ago. Randy's other notable wars were with Tito Ortiz and Vitor Belfort, to name some other legends as well. Those of you who remember the tap-out era of the UFC will be familiar with The Natural, but whether you watched him fight live or you're catching up to his work a little later, all of us fight fans can appreciate the path he paved for today's fighters. Number 9. Number 9 on our list is none other than Rashad Evans. With Rashad came a unique blend of speed, athleticism, and knockout power brought to the 205-pound division. He became the light heavyweight champion after a very convincing TKO of Forrest Griffin at UFC 92 at the very tail end of 2008, which was a great year, not only for MMA but just in general. Another stunning performance worth mentioning of his was his knockout of Chuck Liddell at UFC 88.
What do you remember from that stare down? Do you remember feeling like, oh, I've got an edge here?
That's when it got real to me, right? During training camp, everybody was like, oh man, you gotta fight Chuck. And I'm like, yeah. And then they'd be like, you know, sorry for your loss. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Like, it was kind of like already a foregone conclusion.
Evans was without a doubt a total standout fighter during his prime, with great charisma and an awesome skill set to go along with it, the complete package, if you will. His rivalry against Quinton Rampage Jackson is one of the best rivalries in MMA history. Number 8. Sitting at number 8 is Mauricio Shogun Rua. First off, his aggressive Muay Thai style paired with his iron chin made him a terror within the ring. His Pride FC days were nothing short of legendary, especially in his run through the 2005 Middleweight Grand Prix, where he defeated the likes of Quinton Rampage Jackson and Ricardo Arona. In the UFC, he captured the light heavyweight title by defeating Lyoto Machida at UFC 113 in a thrilling fashion in their rematch.
Shogun wins the title!
The wars Shogun had with Dan Henderson, most especially the first fight at UFC 139, are among the best fights in the history of MMA. You could argue what spot Shogun should have on this list, but you really can't argue that he doesn't belong in the top 10. Comment below if you disagree with me. Number 7. Coming in at lucky number 7 on our list, Lyoto the Dragon Machida is a karate stylist that very few people could manage to work out. The Dragon was extremely elusive in his movement. He possessed a pinpoint accuracy in his striking that helped lead him to the light heavyweight title at UFC 98 when he bested Rashad Evans. Another insane Machida fight was his knockout of Randy Couture at UFC 129 by a spectacular crane kick. Fun fact about UFC 129, at the time it broke records for being the biggest gate with 55,000 fans in attendance, who nearly blew the roof off of the Sky Dome after witnessing history. Machida's unconventional approach and highlight reel finishes have carved out his legacy as one of the all-time greats in the world of mixed martial arts. Number 6. Sitting near the halfway point of our list at the 6th slot, we have my fellow Louisiana boy, Daniel D.C. Cormier. As possibly one of the most rounded athletes ever to compete for a title in the light heavyweight division, Cormier's well-rounded approach to grappling along with his striking made him a champion to be feared. The animosity and hatred he shared with John Jones is probably the reason for the hottest light heavyweight rivalry in UFC history, with fights at UFC 182 and UFC 214.
Jones trying to press the issue here. Trying to survive.
He's out.
John Jones has done it.
Fun fact, the Jones versus Cormier rivalry all began after a simple comment backstage at UFC 121 when John told DC, "I bet I could take you down." As they say, the rest is history. As much controversy as there was around DC, the dominance of Cormier in both the light heavyweight and heavyweight division solidifies his spot in the top 10 for sure. Number 5. Smack dab in the middle of our list is Quentin Rampage Jackson. Known for his ridiculous charisma and star power and for wearing a big chain around his neck, Rampage was a force in the light heavyweight division no matter what organization or country he fought in. Rampage's battles with Wanderlei Silva in Pride FC and the UFC are legendary in their own right, particularly their fight at UFC 92, where Rampage avenged his previous losses with a first-round knockout.
People that are not familiar with Wanderlei, his nickname is the Axe Murderer. I mean, at this stage of your career, what do you really hope to prove at this point?
Well, honestly, Wanderlei gave me 2 of the worst beatings I ever had in my career. And then the third time I fought him, I knocked him out in the first round. You know, I have to tie this fight up, or I would not be happy with my career.
His rivalry with Rashad Evans also gave us one of the most entertaining seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. So yeah, Rampage is number 5, and deservingly so for his overall level of influence on the sport when it was in its adolescent years. Number 4. At number 4, we have the Huntington Beach bad boy, Tito Ortiz. One of the first stars that this organization produced, Tito Ortiz truly made his presence known with his enigmatic persona and brutal, devastating ground and pound that he'd find himself using to finish fights over and over. Ortiz managed to defend the light heavyweight championship successfully 5 times during his reign, which included some real memorable wars for Ortiz against the likes of Ken Shamrock,
The Iceman!
who he fought at UFC 47. His feud with Liddell is probably the most famous rivalry in UFC history and is the single rivalry that turned me into an avid MMA watcher. Tito's feud with his own boss, Dana White, was probably the funniest MMA feud of all time. To this day, Dana swears up and down that Tito Ortiz is stupid.
Here's the problem with Tito. And Tito's just a really dumb human being. He's not intelligent at all. He's very, very stupid. Google Tito Ortiz talking, okay? And I don't have any beef with Tito anymore. And Tito,
I can
you know
tell.
you're stupid, Tito. You know you are, so.
Real quick, before we continue, if you'd like more original MMA content just like this posted every week, help me out and drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me make cooler and cooler videos for you. Now back to our list. Number 3. Ranked at number 3 on our list is the Axe Murderer, Wanderlei Silva. Aggressive and relentless, a bit goofy looking, Wanderlei Silva was a fan favorite and a widely feared opponent firsthand during his era. During his time in Pride FC, he dominated some of the best fighters in the world and participated in wars with Quentin Rampage Jackson and Kazushi Sakuraba. Number 2. Chuck the Iceman. Liddell comes in at number 2. The iron chin and devastating knockout power made Liddell one of the most electrifying fighters to watch. As champion of the light heavyweight division, he had epic knockout victories and rivalries with Randy Couture and Tito Ortiz. The Iceman was the first big superstar the UFC ever had, and you had to have lived through his ever-important Pride and UFC runs to truly appreciate it how influential he was on the sport as we know it today, paving the way for the Conor McGregors and the Johnny Bones of the world. Number 1. At number 1, we have the one and only American gangster from West Lynn, Oregon.
Chael Sonnen, it's good to see you.
It's good to be seen.
And when it came to trash talk and pure mic skills, there was no one on his level. His legend really stands apart, though, as somebody who could sell a fight through sheer charisma.
I would never apologize to Anderson. In a million years, I wouldn't apologize to that guy. I offered him a way out. That treaty needed to be signed and faxed back to me on Sunday. He missed it by 3 days. Now we're going to go to war.
He could command an interview like no one else, and he never stuttered or misspoke once. His timing was that of a stand-up comedian. He had some memorable wars with Anderson Silva, especially that first fight at UFC 117, where he dominated for 4.5 rounds before getting submitted in the very tail end of the fight by the Spider. Chael went on to finish his career in Bellator, where he fought even more legends of the sport like Fedor Emelianenko. The impact Sonnen had on the sport derives from more than his in-ring ability. He was a much-needed breath of fresh air at a time when the sport desperately needed a guy who knew how to sell a fight. And sell fights is what Chael Sonnen did better than anyone else.
We have been waiting 3 years until your fight, so what is your feeling now?
Hello, sweet potato. What was the question? I was a little distracted. What'd you say?
Just kidding. The number 1 is actually John Jones. But you knew that already. Do you disagree with this list? Comment below and let's argue about it. If you liked the video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you won't miss any original weekly MMA content. Speaking of original MMA content, here's another video for you right here.